Artificial intelligence is advancing fast, but it's human expertise that makes the difference. I'm Rob Lauber, a 30-year veteran of the ever-changing world of workplace learning and performance. Join me and my guests on this PepTalk series, where we'll unpack how professionals, leaders, and innovators are shaping AI's role in organizations, and how they'll blend AI-powered tools with live human experiences. Let's explore what happens when human expertise meets artificial intelligence. And I'm super honored today to have with me Erik Qualman. And a little bit about Erik, if you don't know him, you're living under a rock, but Erik's a 5-time #1 bestselling author and keynote speaker. He's performed in over 55 countries, reached 50 million people, which is probably understated. I love these fun facts where he was actually voted the second most likable author in the world behind Harry Potter's J.K. Rowling. That's no small feat. His socialnomics work has been on 60 Minutes, the Wall Street Journal, used by the National Guard and NASA. He's a current professor of digital leadership at Northwestern University, and his materials are used in over 500 universities right now. He also has an animation studio that works with some of the world's leading brands, including Disney, Oreo, Chase, Cartier, many more. Former sitting professor at MIT and Harvard's edX Labs, where I think he's still an advisor. He's received an honorary degree, doctorate degree for his groundbreaking work. And he's also the inventor of a best-selling board game called Kitty Corn. And most importantly, similar to me actually, he's trying to live up to the world's greatest dad coffee mug he received from his wife and 2 daughters. And as the father of 3 daughters, I can certainly relate to that, Erik. In terms of that's probably the toughest standard of all to live up to. My first question for you really is, I was doing a little background here, and in your talks, you emphasize the importance of balancing AI with human interaction. You refer to it as Jetsons and Flintstones. Could you elaborate on more on what this balance entails and why it's crucial in today's digital age?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. It's important, as always, to not replace the face-to-face. And so you can't replace the coffees, the lunches, or the conferences, even conferences face-to-face. We learned that the hard way a couple of years ago during the pandemic. But it's really about layering in these tools when time, safety, distance, and scale are an issue. How can I use these tools when time, distance, safety, and scale are an issue to deepen relationships? So that's the key that all leaders that I've been blessed to meet across those countries share. They understand it always leads with the Flintstones. And then how do we use these tools to deepen those relationships, that human connection? So that's what you never want to leave sight is if you just kind of sit there and go tool, 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 you will lose long term.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch, this enamorment or distraction really with generative tools, for example, where it's like, well, I'll just go ask ChatGPT as opposed to phoning a friend, right? Very interesting sort of dynamics to watch these days in terms of probably leaning a bit too much into the hype. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's overhyped short term, underhyped long term, and we don't know what that term is. We both, Robbie, you and I would be the richest people in the world if we knew the timeline of any of these things. But most of this stuff is slow until it's really fast. And so when I say underhyped long term, it's like AI is going to be huge. I call it co-intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is a bad name for it. That it's just something like you said, you ping your coworkers, you should first, and then ping co-intelligence just to figure out, get different ideas, different bounces. But I still always get all my best ideas from those coffees and those lunches. But now more and more following that coffee and lunch, I'll just kind of go into some of our co-intelligence, just try to figure out what they're saying as well and kind of marry those two together.
It makes a lot of sense. You've identified like 5 digital leadership habits that drive success. How do these evolve now when you integrate AI into organizational strategies?
Yes. So from our research, we want to figure out, technology changes every second, human nature never does. And so when we're sitting down with leaders, we want to know like what stands the test of time, knowing that you can't predict the future, that you can only kind of help design it yourself. And by designing it, that means the habits that you practice. And so when we went into our research, we didn't know if it was going to be 3 habits, 15 habits, but it turns out that there's really 5 common habits when it comes to leaders in this digital era. And as we step into the quantum era, and those 5 habits form the acronym STAMP, just for super fast flyover. It's just really about simplifying this stuff down. That allows you to go further, faster. It's about being true to yourself, always having that true north, So don't just chase the wind with this new technology. A's for action. Don't be afraid to take that action. Take that step. Fail fast, fail forward, fail better. I talk about being flawsome. People don't love you because you're perfect. They love you because you're perfectly flawed. So be flawsome. It's about M for map. Big difference there is you've got a firm destination, but flexible in your path. That's the big shift. Flexible in your path on how you get there. And then last but not least, it's P for people. How to surround yourself with the right people, both offline and also online. So it's really about simple, true, act, map, P for people, and go deep on which one you're the strongest in.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Probably great for the environment, particularly where people are feeling uncertain about what all this means. It's sort of a way to almost get control of your world, right? And sort of manage through the uncertainty that might lie ahead.
Yeah, indeed. No, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, in your book, The Focus Project, you talk about the importance of like focus in an unfocused world, which is, I think the stamp model is a great way to sort of drive that focus. How does this apply to, how do you see this sort of evolving or applying as professionals work alongside AI technologies?
The key is like focus is first and foremost as an individual, no matter what the technology is, it's really how do I focus on big versus busy things? How do I focus? And sometimes that means going slow in the short term to get long term gains. If you go slow in the short term, you're going to achieve more long term. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, busy is emails pulling at you every day, or it's like, what's the shiny object pulling at you? Big is that idea that you wanted to accomplish. And sometimes it's something you want to accomplish for years, but it's really about chipping away at that slowly each and every day. And then long term, you'll accomplish more things. So that's the key is how to focus on big versus busy. And then when it comes to technology, how do I focus on being that change versus fearing that change? Because all of us, including myself, and I love technology, it's when new things come out, the first thing you do is kind of fear it and don't want to get into it because it's just another thing that's added, you think it's added to your plate. But it's really about embracing, okay, how do I be the change versus fearing that change?
Yeah, interesting stuff. And again, back to sort of driving more certainty in an uncertain world, right? Is about that focus, and I really love that idea in terms of helping people navigate and manage through that. You've also, that leads me to another thing. You've talked a lot about sort of being the disruptor rather than the disrupted, right? So how does that fit into sort of the focus pieces we just talked about, your stamp model, those kind of things, and then this overlay of sort of AI as a distractor slash disruptor slash enabler at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's about, being the disruptor versus the disrupted is really believing in yourself. And so you don't use old maps to get to new places, right? New destinations. You're not going to use an old map. So as a pioneer, which a lot of you out there are, you're pioneering, you're going to get that pushback. It's actually really frustrating in the moment, but long term, that means it's like you're actually pioneering. When you're not getting that pushback, that's when you're like, uh-oh, I'm about to get disrupted or my organization's about to get displaced. And so all of you have like an examples of this. So firsthand, like 15 years ago, when I wrote my first book, Socialnomics, search engine optimization was huge. Paid search, 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 search. And so I was actually the head of marketing at Travel Zoo, and we spent an exorbitant amount on search, which is unusual for a small company that went private and then we went public. So they're all curious, like, how is this small company crushing it? And they're spending why are they spending so much on search? So they wanted us to explain why we're talking search at these search engine conferences. Yep, they exist. Search engine conferences, they do exist. And I started talking about social media, which at the time everyone thought was teenage stuff. And so they're like, this Qualman guy's crazy. Like, there's not anyone going to his sessions. He's supposed to be here to talk. We want to hear about search, not social. He's talking about this teenage thing called MySpace. And so you have to have that conviction to really go, yep, I get it. Everyone's a lot of noise saying, what are you talking about this teenage stuff? And then all of a sudden it's the right place, right time. That's like, no, this stuff's going to be big for business, politics, going to revolutionize how we communicate. So for all of us out there, we got to understand that when you're pioneering, you're going to get that pushback. And so listen to it to understand like maybe where you adjust, but also understand you're like, nope, this is why everyone thinks I'm crazy. That's a good thing because they don't see it. So let me just stay the course take in that information, but keep having that firm destination, but flexible in your path on how you get there.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the big prompt conference, right? First conference, right? Now it's prompt, prompt, prompt. But it was just sort of leading me to think about, there's a concept in that around sort of right place, right time too, right? That you need to be thinking about as well as a measure against your ideas. Like you were talking about social networks and those types of things, sort of a bit ahead of its moment, right? So how did you, people are like, hey, we want you to talk, bring us back here. Wait a second. How did you bring people along sort of because you could see the future where it was going. Many people can't. What's your sort of secret to taking people with you on that?
Gosh, I mean, it's really just trying to pick the one that you think's going to happen sooner rather than later. But again, none of us can get that timing right because you'd be the richest person in the world. So if QR codes 2003, we're at the tip of the spear. You're like, everyone's going to use QR codes. They're so amazing. They're so useful. And then no one uses it till 17 years later. Pandemic hits. Okay, we're going to use these. Example, what that looks like right now. I'm like, hey, mobile voting, and this is where people look at you like you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. This is why it won't happen. I'm like, mobile voting is going to happen, but we just don't know when it's going to happen. It could be 5 years, could be 20 years. So it's really about testing the stuff out. So when that moment hits, like, okay, the world's ready for it. They're ready for that QR code. They're ready for the social media. It's getting ready. They're ready for digital currency. That's another example. No doubt in my mind, there's going to be one global currency that's digital. Is it Bitcoin? I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to happen. But we don't know the timing. So self-driving cars, we don't know the timing. They've been talking about that since the 50s. That's why it's called the automobile. And so it's trying to figure out which one's got the most likelihood to happen. So artificial intelligence, I think, is going to happen. It's already happening. We're using it. So that's a good indicator. Is we're at the tip of the spear of it, at the beginning of it. I don't know when the big, massive takeover is with artificial, not like in a dystopian way, but that's why you just got to keep your kind of ear to the ground. But when you're seeing 500 million weekly users using something like ChatGPT and grandparents are using it, that's unusual. That hasn't happened before. That's fast. And so it's about figuring out, okay, what's next with this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because I talk to people about the pace of evolution. Will probably be faster this time around, but the path of evolution will likely be the same, right? A lot of trial error on the outset, a lot of great ideas on the front, a lot of big bold predictions about how it's going to eliminate everybody's job and we're just going to sit at home, kind of, crazy prognosticating out there. Yet at the same time, most big change has always been very evolutionary, right? I'm old enough, unfortunately, to remember when the internet started and, when a desktop computer landed in the office and those kind of things. And it was like, oh my God, it's over, right? And or e-commerce, well, we'll never go to a store again, right? And here we are 25 years later still doing all those things, but in much different ways than they were before, right? Evolved more than sort of dissolved, I guess, is a way to think about it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I remember working on a project as an intern on the next school bus design. So if you ever want to know anything about that yellow school bus, I know more than I could bore your pants off with that. It does get fascinating when you get in the weeds on some of this stuff, but that was the thought before the turn of the century. So over a quarter of a century ago, when you think about it, that's wild. But everyone thought the school bus was going to go away because it'd all be remote learning. This is before online learning. They thought you'd be doing, because they saw people learning Spanish from the best Spanish teacher in the world, all VHS tape, beta, whatever. And so crazy DVDs. And so the school bus hasn't changed much. And so fortunately, we got it right when my prediction was, hey, it's not going to change much. You're going to go to the little bigger buses because there's more students. There's Class D buses, flat nose for safety. Other than that, uh, not much is going to change. And so that's another example of what that looks like as well.
Yeah. So thinking about AI, I think it's sort of back to where we started in the construct of like, the human interaction, human intelligence piece has always been important. Our need for experts has always been important. It's funny, I was talking to people last week and I'm at a conference and I'm like, you're all here because you value learning from other people, right? Don't expect that to change, right? If it was to change, you wouldn't come. You would just go, type in your chat GPT or whatever tool you use and you'd get the answers to everything you wanted to learn, right? And so So I think it's a really important reminder for all of us, and I know you're doing a ton of work in that space as well. What are you seeing organizations grapple with when it comes to that sort of AI HI balance kind of world?
The biggest grapple, just like any technology for the last 30 years, is just understanding, making sure that all you have to do at the end of the day, this kind of, because it gets overwhelming. All this stuff gets very overwhelming quickly. And this stuff's amazing. I mean, some of the stuff I could do is just mind boggling. Some of the stuff I did this morning using it. And you should be using this stuff every day because, again, it's slow till it's fast. So you need to be in it all the time. So the biggest thing they're wrestling with is they're overcomplicating things more times than not. Just remind yourself, any organization, small, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. It's all about, all I need to do is stay a year ahead of the competition, but never a year ahead of my market. So you never want to be ahead of your market because you're just going to be burning cash. And you just got to remember, I just got to be a year ahead of my competition. So depending on what marketplace you're in, unless you're in the entertainment, the fastest moving are always tech, entertainment, and auto. And so if you're not in those, you have the blessing of seeing what they're going through. And yes, I know we all want to think we're unique, but fortunately, most industries, when you engage with most of them, like I have, they're like 90% the same. There's some compliance things in different industries, but it's really looking to those fast leaders to understand what's working, what's not working. And then it's going to come down the pipe to you. It always does. And so just learn from them and just remind yourself, I just need to stay a year ahead of my competition, but I don't need to be a year ahead of my market. That'd be bad to be a year ahead of my market with this stuff.
Yeah, super. I think that's some great advice in terms of in that work. I've been in a few conversations where people trying to sort of figure out where to start, figure out where to go, understand where they can, where the biggest impact, meaningful value driving impact can be. Those kind of things. I've also been in quite a few conversations around sort of ethical use and ethical implications. Have you been in any of those kind of conversations, or what have you seen on that front?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, anytime there's new technology, there's always nefarious actors, and so it's important to always, at the core, teach those ethics. That's why at the university level, that's one of the best things, and at the elementary level, all the way to high school, it's really teaching ethics and how to be kind, because no matter what this technology does, you need to have that core as a base. So there's always nefarious actors with any kind of new technology, so it's important we're aware of that. But the good thing is, we humans have a good history of working through that and figuring it out. But sometimes that's longer than we'd like social media. What are we working through? We're working through it's causing teen suicide. And so, especially on the female level, and you have 3 daughters, I have 2 daughters. And so it's important to understand that, how can we get through this faster? And so voices like us, if we can figure that out quickly, to realize, what's the seatbelt? What's the seatbelt for this? What's the skiing helmet for this? Uh, so you look back, it's laughable. Like, what? You just picture, you're not even wearing a helmet. You're skiing. Like, what are you doing? Or you're in a car, you don't even have a seatbelt on? That's crazy. So we figure these things out. Hopefully we figure them out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm seeing a lot of conversations around sort of the boundaries, right? And AI has really been sort of a boundary expander, right? It lets you do things you couldn't do before. Yet at the same time as the boundaries expand, unintended consequences might lurk into the shadows there, right? And I love your seatbelt helmet kind of analogy, because I think that's right. It's where do you really need to make sure you're not going to crash, and make sure you're not going to hurt yourself in the process, right? Super interesting.
They need to know what you're comfortable with. I was talking to a CEO that fascinating use, because I like talked about at the beginning, it's all about co-intelligence. So thinking about coworkers, co-intelligence, bouncing ideas. And so what they do, and this is, you got to figure out what you can do from a legal standpoint within your company, and also what you're comfortable with. But this company's more than comfortable. Before every board meeting, they've been doing this now for 6 quarters, that they actually will upload their deck that they're giving to the board. And then I also upload information about each board member. And so then they say, how is this board member going to react in this quarterly meeting to the information that we're going to be going over? And they found the accuracy level is about 85 to 93%. They use all the tools to predict it. It seems like Claude works the best in this instance, but they're doing that before the meeting. So that was a fascinating use, just to bounce those ideas. Oh, this board member's going to be interested in this. This board member's going to react negatively to this. And so before they all on the same page, they know what's going on. But it's just fascinating to kind of, that's a great use of this technology.
Well, you think about it, it elevates the quality of the conversation then as well, right? Because people are able to, if you're able to anticipate how someone might react without actually having, putting it in front of them, it makes you that much more prepared for those situations, improving the quality of what you're trying to convey, at the same time improving the quality of the conversation that goes on, right? And that's the super, that's the super outcomes that you always want from great human interactions. So really cool. Erik, thanks so much for joining us for these few minutes today. We really enjoyed the conversation. Anything else you want to add? How's your aspiration going against your kids? I know for me, it's a constant challenge. Mine are in their early 20s, all navigating this work world where it's like, what is, the constant question is like, what does this mean, right? To everything that's going on these days.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things. I was just cleaning up some of my computer and seeing some old footage with the girls, and it's just a reminder that's the number one thing that we can do in life. And so, anything we obviously on the individual level as dads that we're doing that, but then also beyond that scope is how can we help everyone, this younger generation, out. So hopefully, use some of our wisdom with these new technologies, because as you said, really that path is always very similar. The pace is changing and will. I love the way you said that as we jump into the quantum era, but anything that we can do to help people. So I always just say at the end of the day, have fun, period, help people, period. And so anything we can do to that end, that's a win.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us today, Erik. Really loved the conversation, and I appreciate you making the time to have us on this Pep Talk series.
No, love it, Rob. Thank you so much. What an honor.
All right. Thank you.